Tonight, Abeba Wright, the Crazy Kracker lady. We don't exactly have the type of area here where you can do a demonstration, so just in getting to meet Abeba and having some conversations with her, I realized she had a lot more to contribute besides her incredible crackers. And we had a conversation where she was talking about the adjustments necessary in your lifestyle and maybe your spiritual philosophy, and just how we shop, just how we even organize our refrigerator to do a raw food lifestyle. So she came up with the topic, are you willing to adjust? Which is a pretty broad topic, so we'll see where she ends up going with that. If you haven't heard of her before, here's where I give the great intro. Abeba, known as the Crazy Kracker Lady, is a certified raw chef, teacher, and motivational speaker. She's been a guest at the Ann Wigmore Institute as a teacher and instructor. Her teaching methods are known to be fun, humorous, and filled with wisdom. One of her most treasured achievements has been writing her international best-selling book, Absolutely Abeba's Crazy Crackers, Learning the Secret to a Good Cracker. It's become a staple in both the raw food and the cooked food communities. She's contributed 8 of her most requested recipes to the best-selling book, The Complete Book of Raw Food, which features over 50 raw food chefs from around the world. And she was featured in the Bay Area's Oakland magazine discussing the raw food lifestyle and, of course, her crazy crackers. So here's Abeba Wright.
Shea makes me sound better than what I really am or what people think I am. But anyway, I just want to thank Shea very much for inviting me to come here. We actually had not met until last month, I believe it was. We were at a festival in Santa Rosa. John Kohler was giving the event, and she actually saw me on his website and called me up and said, listen, I'd like you to come and speak at our Monday Night Live. And I said, what's that all about? And we ended up being at this retreat, and I said, make sure that you introduce yourself to me so that I know who you are. So anyway, when she asked me to speak on something, I normally would think people ask me about talking about crazy crackers. I mean, what else would they call me and ask me to do? So when she says, well, no, we don't really have space for you to do a demo, but we will have you, I would like to have you come and talk about something. So as it got closer to the time of doing this radio interview or this telephone interview, I said, man, you know, what am I going to really talk about? So all of a sudden, I started thinking about adjustments, and what that really meant. So anyway, this morning, and actually probably for the whole week, I was thinking about adjustments. And so what I want to do is kind of ask you that question. When you hear the word adjust or adjustments, what do you think about? So I'm just going to kind of point out, and you can tell me what you think when you hear the word adjustments. What do you think about when you hear adjust or adjustments? Just say it out loud.
Adding more raw foods to your diet and leaving off the things that aren't so good for you.
Okay, and is it just about food when you hear the word adjust? It doesn't necessarily have to be about food. It could be about anything. So what would you say?
The first word that comes to my mind is loss.
Loss, okay. And what about you, young lady? What would you say?
Change.
Change is excellent. And then what about yourself in the beautiful, colorful top? What would you say?
I would also say change.
Okay, all right. Well, what I came up with from my list, just some words whenever I would say the word adjust, I had down adjust my schedule, adjust my seat belt, adjust my time, adjust medications. If people are on medications, you know, when you have to take medication, a lot of times the doctors will say, we might need to adjust the dosage. Adjust your shoe strap or adjust your belt buckle when you've lost or gained weight. You can be proud when you've lost weight, you can tighten that belt buckle. I put down adjust my braces. When I was in junior high school, I had to wear braces, and I remember when the doctor had to tighten my braces when my teeth were starting to move. Adjust your glasses when you have to have a stronger strength or a lesser strength. I also put adjust my eating. And that's where we come to this raw food experience. But before I do that, I'm going to just read to you the definition of adjust from the dictionary. To make mechanical changes so that parts fit or work together. They work together properly. To regulate, to make or become, or to make or to become suitable, to fit, to adapt, to adjust oneself to new circumstances, And in the raw food lifestyle, I've made a few adjustments. I'll just back up and say, as far as how I got into raw food, I was vegetarian first. I'm 53 years old, and at 25, I had to make my first adjustment when I'd gone to the doctor and found out that my blood pressure was 160/100 at 25. And my family, both sides of my family, they do have high blood pressure. And my doctor said, if you don't want to take medication, you're going to have to do something. So that was my first big adjustment. So she said, I want to see you in 3 weeks, and if your blood pressure hasn't gone down, we're going to have to do something. So I decided I don't want to take medication. So what I did was I stopped eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, which I didn't eat the meat, but I tore those biscuits up because they were so good. And started exercising, which was something that I really didn't do. So when I came back 3 weeks later, my blood pressure went down to 130/90. So I said, okay, there's something with this food thing. And believe it or not, I really believe that I was born to be vegetarian, vegan, or raw foodist, whatever you want to call it, because even as a child, I really never ate meat. I always ate everything else on my plate. I'd eat the vegetables, the cornbread we had every Sunday, and if I got to the meat, fine. If I did, not a big deal. And then my older sister, she's somebody that I always wanted to do whatever she wanted to do. Whatever she said do, I would do, except for drugs. But she was vegetarian, and I said, well, that's what I want to do. So at 25, I became a vegetarian. I stopped doing all the fast food. My weight came down. I said, wow, this is really good. Then I became vegan. I'm going to get a little water here, excuse me. Then I became vegan. And the only reason why I became vegan was a lady that I get a lot of herbs from her from time to time. And she was saying, you need to stop white sugar, white flour, dairy, all those things that I thought were okay except for the white sugar. And I said, well, what for? She said, you got a lot of mucus, you need to make some changes. So again, another adjustment. So I said, okay. So for about a month or so, I had given up those foods. And I thought, okay, I don't feel any different. I feel all right. So I went to a Mexican restaurant, which I'll let the name remain unknown. And I would go there and I always have chili rellenos, which is full of cheese. And so I took my first bite, and as soon as I had the first bite, I did. And I said, what happened? Where did that come from? And so I said, well, maybe she was right about the dairy. So I stopped doing the dairy, and so then that began my vegan quest. And so the raw food came some years later at the request of this same woman that I would get herbs from time to time. And she said, you need to do a detox. And I'm like, a detox? What do I need to do a detox for? She said, you really need to do that. And I suggest you go to Optimum Health Institute. And when she mentioned that place, I envisioned this place as being a place where there were people that were sick, that looked sick. And I didn't want to spend the money that it cost to get there to be walking around and being around people that looked sick. And so she said, that's not what's going to happen there. You need to go. So 5 years went by. And then I said, and that was in '99, and I said, well, maybe I'll go. And if some of you remember, there was something called the Millennium Madness that was going on when everybody said the world is coming to an end and all this kind of thing. And I have a retail business, a retail store, and a lot of my customers were coming in and saying, oh, the world's coming to an end, I'm gonna buy all this food, I'm gonna go live on my boat. And well, the world's coming to an end, how you gonna live on a boat? The people were just saying all kinds of foolish things. And also at that time, because of the stress that was going on, I'll back up a little bit more. About 30 years prior, I'd had some lymphatic issues. And I had a lymph node that came up here that I thought I had a crook in my neck. And I had to have those lymph nodes removed. I have a scar that's here. And prior to going to Optimum, which I went in 2000, I had another lymph node that had popped up. And I was not going to get cut on again. I refused to do that. And so through a lot of prayer and talking again with this woman, my father's also a retired physician. He was ready to say, you got to get, this biopsy. And I said, Dad, I'm not going to get cut on again.